we cannot escape our biology, and I think that there's a difference between being adapted to what is intrinsically natural to how the human animal ticks and runs and thrives, and then being maladapted to a sick society. And I think that we are a highly adaptable species. We can morph and change to anything. We can become experts on the computer, but we're suffering when we spend all our time in front of a computer. Period. In my opinion, we are. We're disconnected from the Earth's surface. I mean, unless you're sitting outside, you're under fluorescent lights. You're hyper focused. Your hips are stuck in 90-degree hip flexion. Like, your body is adapting to its environment all the time. But is that adaptation beneficial to thriving life? Does it support thriving life, or does it just support mass production? You know, that's the question for me.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Going Out Looking in, the podcast where we're exploring the human experience through conscious conversations. My name is Maxi, I'm your host, and today we are rewilding with my guest, Tim Matz. Yes everyone, here we go again. It's been a while, I know. And the context of this conversation is a couple of friends who follow Tim on social media who pointed out his work to me. I went and checked it out, reached a similar conclusion of his work being very different to a lot of the stuff that I see on a regular basis, to the degree that he is just really, embodying a certain kind of rawness and authenticity and really doing his own thing. And that is through primal movement, through movement in ways, through nature, with nature, that I have rarely seen online. I think one of the first videos is just like him punching like an insanely big and heavy punching bag with his bare hands as part of his workout. That really struck my attention. And since then, I was diving a little bit deeper into his philosophy. And yeah, this conversation is also diving deeper into who this person is behind the account and behind the videos and all of that. And I found there is a man of great wisdom, a variety of teachings that influence his way of being in the world, a devoted father, a very committed husband as well, and someone who really does his own thing. And in today's world, with all of the temptations, that is something that really stands out for me. This conversation circles around the intersection between the modern times, technology, like I said, temptations, and how we can combine that with life in the wild and coming back to the body, rewilding, the effects of technology on our children, and how that affects also the role of, in that case, Tim as a father. We speak on that extensively. We speak about the importance of initiation in a man's life. We speak about rites of passage, men's work, deep listening, depth in a relationship, unconditional love, gratitude, so much more beautiful stuff with really someone who is living in a life of integrity, I feel like. We also even touch a little bit about on business and Tim's experience with growing a social media following within 1 year to over, I believe, 150K on Instagram. So very, very impressive, and that by sticking to his way of doing things and not following some sales strategies and sharky sort of approaches, which I really, really like and can identify with 100%. So with all that being said, I wish you, as always, beautiful insights, and let this be a reminder to just go outside without anything. There's so much answers coming in the stillness. Something I like to say is like, I'm opening myself up for higher guidance when being in deep nature. The answers will come, my loves. The answers will come. I see you soon. This episode with myself and Tim Matz. And then, not just talking about like creating a sacred space, but really making it sacred. So there's a little bit of a ceremonial aspect of what we do here in the podcast. And normally I just do some little prayer and stuff, but today I just pulled out the Gene Keys book from Richard Rudd. I don't know if you're familiar with him and his teachings, but there's a beautiful prayer in there about manifestation and divine service. And I just pulled it up and it felt suitable. So if you're up for it, I would just quickly recite it and invite us to drop in and then straight away hit the conversation.
Please.
Yeah? All right. Beautiful. So just invite us to arrive in the space, however is comfortable for you. Also the listener, wherever you are, in the car, driving, on a walk, just at home, may want to have something that is really supporting you and makes you be in touch with Mother Earth. I like to have my feet on the ground, barefoot, to really have a solid connection. With that being said, just invite us to take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. In, Anali. And out, Askilama. In again, Anali. And out. And one more in Anali. And out. Skilama. Angels and beings of the higher worlds, please help me to bring this wish into form. I ask this thing in order to align more deeply with my higher purpose, and so that I can be of greater service to the whole. Please help me to manifest the very highest possible potential within the limitations of this form. Purify my aura constantly in order for higher forces to work through me. I make my body, heart, and soul available for your pure emanations. Make me an instrument of your wisdom, your love, and your truth.
I pray for that as well.
Beautiful. And with that, slowly come back to the space. Thanks for doing this with me, Tim.
Yeah.
So on this day, what's alive?
Well, I'm going to go outside because I'm going to see you a little bit better.
Yeah.
Give me one sec. What's alive? Well, I'm back in Oregon, and I just spent a couple months in Colorado, which is where I feel like I grew up, even though I grew up later than I think traditional people's kids grow up. I had to get initiated a little later on in life, outside of my own ramblings and self-destructive initiations as a youth. But yeah, so I'm back here, and luckily it's not smoky. Normally it's really smoky here right now because the West is quite flammable.
Right.
And yeah, I'm not sure if you know who David Abram is. He wrote Spell of the Sensuous. But
No, I don't think so.
right now I feel like I have a very heightened sensory awareness of the aliveness of everything around me after listening to him a little bit today, and really in love with his work right now. So yeah, just a very, yeah, I'm feeling a bit magical, more magical than normal right now.
What have you learned from him?
I just got exposed to him. It's a book that my wife has read, and it's been sitting on the bookshelf, and I've always been like, "Oh, what's the Spell of the Sensuous?" And it's a very respected book in the field of human ecology and nature-based understandings, and um, yeah, I mean, it's like realizing that there's that we all share one breath, essentially, is what I've been meditating on,
Mm.
and that everything's actually talking through its own movement. And yeah, I just feel like I'm actually, yeah, just feeling a lot more. I feel quite at home in the woods, but I feel even more just enchanted with the like visceral feeling of just total aliveness all around me. And so
Mm.
yeah, which I think is a lost thing, you know, as we move more and more towards a augmented reality and filled with technological convenience and immediate pleasures. And yeah, we get further and further removed from the earth's surface, and natural light and landscapes are removed for building and building more and more, and constant expansion and production. It's I'm relishing in just getting smaller and smaller into the ecosystem.
Yes.
Hopefully I can continue to do that in a good way as I get older.
Well, I actually, I actually had to, yeah, chuckle a little bit because I was obviously in the preparation for this, watching some of your stuff and also tuning into your website and your offerings, um, and then just like the apparent, um, it's just two worlds when you look at it. Really, there's like a very high quality video of you being in nature, which then you use technology, very advanced technology and cameras to convey an atmosphere, and to get across a message that then says, rewild, go back outside, get away from the very device you're looking through. And at the same time, it is the one thing that is transmitting that message. So there is an apparent, right? It's a paradox, isn't it? And it's like something we all have to navigate at some level. And I mean, I've been struggling with that for years in my corporate career, which I now left behind. But I don't know, like I guess just putting it in a question, like how is your relationship with these, as a friend of mine calls them, false caberstones, these these devices, and our modern day, and also our basically the source of wealth and of making a living, but then also the disconnect that it causes.
Yeah, it's a great question. I battle with the same human tendencies to be absorbed into it, especially when there's so much attention on whatever I put out, which I didn't expect. And I've only been on the internet for like a year.
Oh wow.
And And so it's just been crazy. I live out in the woods, and I had taken a pretty staunch um, abstinence from social media. I've had a smartphone for, I don't know. I've always had a smartphone since they came out, I guess. But I was never creating content like this. And before I like kind of left the world about 12 years ago to go live on retreat, where I lived in Colorado for 6 years. I lived on retreat and then stayed out there and was still removed from social media. It wasn't until I came out here and met my wife and was training. We live off grid out in the woods, and I drive to town to train people. I drive to town and into the neighboring towns to trim horses. And it's just a lot. It's a lot to be away from my family that much, a lot to be driving that much, especially as a farrier. There's so much driving. And, my wife was just like, why don't you try and coach online? It's a whole thing, And I was like, I don't know. I don't even know where, like, for one, I don't think I'm that interesting. People think I'm interesting, but I've never really felt like, oh, I'm so special. Let me bring this specialness to the world or anything like that. It's just, she's like, our lifestyle's cool, might inspire some people, and you could make better money maybe and be home and be living the way you want to live more. And yeah, I think there's this illusion that like, I don't know, that working online is going to like liberate you in some way. But honestly, it's been very hard for me. It's been really, really hard. It's been very distracting. I think because I took so much time off from the internet, I didn't like develop with the times, with like the coming out of various technologies and systems and how they integrate, and like I missed the boat on like a lot of that stuff. And so I figured out how to make Instagram reels. Other than that, it's been a major uphill battle for me to figure out how to translate what I do in a way that feels good to me, because I see a lot of kind of like coercive, sharky kind of coaching stuff online that's always really turned me off. I get solicited by coaches who coach coaches every day, trying to tell me that I need to only sell $1,500 coaching packages, and I'm just like, I don't have any interest for any of that stuff. Those people get blocked. Like I don't want to talk to you about this. And so, it's been a real journey, and I feel like I've finally arrived at something that I feel really, really good about, with the help of a dear friend of mine who's he's been in the scene for a long time. So he's helped me. He jumped in and helped me out to just organize my methodology, which is just a synthesis of other methodologies. It's nothing brand new under the sun. And I'm actually trying to advocate for what's the oldest under the sun, ultimately.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I'm happy now that I have something that I feel like is really valuable and very affordable for people, which has been my main goal. So I made it, but I struggle with the same things that I'm just a human being like everyone else. And I have to create real boundaries with my phone, because there's all this engagement. And so, yeah, it's a double-edged sword. And, it's unfortunately, or I guess it's just the way that it is that this is where our species is at right now. And it's where everybody's attention is. It just is. It's where the majority of people, and the people who need the message of rewilding, or the message of nature, place-based peoples and how they lived, and they need that message the most. And so it's like, on some level, I feel like I'm infiltrating and trying to do my best to maintain my own practice amidst that, while also just being a human being that's susceptible to all the same things that other humans are. I got the same hardwiring brain and nervous system and dopamine and all that stuff. So I feel like I'm finding balance, but yeah, it's been a challenge actually.
You got like strict rules in place, or I don't know, like things you I don't know, maybe even discuss with your wife, like no phones after a certain hour. I don't know, some countdown on your phone. Something in place with you?
I think I have enough of a whereabout. Like I have enough resolve and groundedness in how I normally live that it's. I don't think I'm. I don't think I'm going for it as much as the average person. And yeah, the truth is that I'm in a phase right now where it's required so much work and so much learning that I've
Yeah.
given myself permission to be on it more. And like, I do my best to really connect and interact with the people who are interested in what I'm doing online. And so I spend a lot of time responding to people. And I'm not like, if people message me, I very often, unless I miss it because there's lots of messages, I'll respond back, and usually with a voice note. I'll take time and really respond. And I'm not like driving people to a sales call and it's like, you better book in. Then it's like I'm trying to be in a different way about, yeah, interacting online, trying to be more authentic and actually just show up for the average person. And so right now I don't have the best boundaries because I've allowed myself to just be like, do
Mm.
whatever I got to do, because that's its own growth edge for me. I feel like I wasn't really raised in a way where I learned the value of hard work and like pushing through things that didn't come totally right away to me. I grew up playing baseball. Raised My father was a semi-pro baseball player, and it was all I knew growing up was playing baseball, and because of that, I shied away from things that I wasn't really good at right away, and that made me quite good at baseball, but also kind of I didn't get to flex that muscle of curiosity and engagement in things that were new to me, and so I've had to learn a lot of things later on in my life, like and I've had to teach myself. I didn't get like, I didn't learn trades as a young man. I didn't learn just that ethic of hard work and pushing through things that are uncomfortable. I've had to learn that later on in life, which has been, I think, a little harder. But um, so yeah, I've been giving myself that. I've been giving myself that, like working against that edge of like, yeah, you don't, because part of me wants to actually just flip the middle finger to all of it. Like I've been joking lately, just like I'm just going to delete my Instagram and disappear. How would that be? Like uh, just go away, and just be like, all right. But I'm not going to do that. I feel like there's enough. I'm getting enough feedback from the universe that it feels good and right and important to be doing what I'm doing and getting people are inspired, people are making shifts in their own lives, and like I'm really really trying to do something that's going to hopefully turn the ship around, so to speak, and inspire people to like live in a way of reciprocity and that natural indebtedness to the natural world that we love and need, and for my great 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 grandkids to inhabit. And so
There you go.
hopefully it's happening. I feel hopeful actually and inspired by some of the people I see online and like what's happening. And yeah, guys like Seth Hughes, I don't know if you
Yeah,
follow him,
sure.
he's one of my
Yeah.
favorites. Yeah, we interact a bit on the back end, and he's just a treasure. But like messages like that, it's leveraging technology to remind us. And yeah, it's hard to say what's going to happen with technology. I mean, it seems like it's just exponentially expanding and it's going to get a lot weirder. But we have to be adaptable. So I'm learning that in real time for myself, how to have a foot in the modern world, but like rooted in place and people,
Mm.
and connected to the more than human world, I think is what the main thing for me is, because that's really what sustains us.
Do you feel like there is a positive correlation, or there might be a positive correlation between things like artificial intelligence and the work that you're doing? Is that in any way, shape, or form combinable? Is there any overlap? Or do you feel like it's just like the one is threatening the other?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like there's I don't really know. You mean like virtual reality?
I guess I could, in a broader sense, just like technology and the further like technologization, like it's just like the further advancement of technology versus on the other side, the simplification of life and the, like really the work you're doing and returning to the body and tuning into like the present moment in a raw and authentic way, the remembrance basically of what it means to be human. Like, do you feel like this is like a counter movement to what is going on in the technological world, or is there like an overlap and one can basically benefit from the other?
I mean, I do feel like it's a resistance, and I try to embody that in, like, I recognize that it's a resistance, but I don't want it to come from a place that's like highly polarized and staunch in any particular black and white way, because I just don't know. I mean, it might be technology that cleans up the oceans, like, am I going to be mad about that? No, right? Like,
Right.
it might be robots that clean up the oceans. So I try to just maintain curiosity and openness, but I think it's a slippery slope. I think it's a slippery slope with AI and obviously virtual reality. Like augmented reality, where people are just denying their biological needs and sitting inside a dark room with a head thing on, and they're traveling to Yosemite instead of actually in love with that place and all the more than human life that subsists there and subsists us from afar, whether we're even aware of it or not. There's no separation between anything on this planet, and that's the illusion. Um, and so it's a really complex question. I don't know. I don't like that. Artists and uh, brilliant writers are being replaced by just this aggregation of past thoughts and things, and like, yeah, I don't know. I feel worried about it in some sense, and also it all just is what it is. It all just is what it is, and so there's a peace in that, and there's an acceptance. But I'm definitely doing my best to remember more and more what it is to be human, to mirror that for my children, to mirror that in what I do, and to not lose touch with what's most important, which is actually just connection to place, the real world, and the more than human world.
What about when you talk about your children, and when you look around, like, I don't know, like I live in Europe, I live in Germany, there's no bus stop, no train station, no school backyard, no, I don't know, man, like no doctor's office without also young people just like staring at their phones constantly. There is no natural break anymore where, I don't know, when I'm speaking, I don't know, with my father, he'll be like, like all of you guys with your meditation apps and stuff, like we meditated at the bus stop basically because we had to literally wait and look around and be with ourselves and sit there for 20 minutes, in silence, no outer stimulation. And so, in regards to your own children, like, how do you manage that? Like, are they exposed to technology, and like, if so, to what degree? And I don't know, what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think, yeah, we have friends who are like staunch primitivists and keep their kids completely from technologies, like have never even had electricity in their home their entire lives, and the kids are very adept in the wild landscape,
Wow.
very skilled, very comfortable, physically incredible, and they're also very like kind of like wild animals a bit, and so they don't have the same social adaptations to emotional, like, uh maturity and like ability to navigate with other people and stuff like this. So there's like, I see the negative effects of having complete abstinence from some of the seemingly inescapable things of the modern world. We know our kids are going to grow up one day. They're going to grow up one day, guaranteed. And they're going to be free to make whatever choices they want. And I think that there needs to be some level of exposure and deep education. I think that the main I don't think that parents need to be afraid of their kids' exposure to technology if their attachment bonds with their kids are strong enough, like they've maintained that congruency in their family. The kids trust the parents and confide in the parents, ask questions with the parents, and like there's this like emotional, there's this honesty and transparency between within the whole family constellation. We're just honest with our kids. We speak about how we feel about things, and we're honest about how we use some of those things that might have negative effects if used to a certain degree. Or like we like, it's Quill's 7, Addie's 5, and then Angus is 1.5 years old, and so they're still really young. And but like they have friends who have more exposure to certain things, and so there will build. I think that, and what I see in some of the older kids who live very primitive, like there builds this almost like resentment towards the parents for not
Mm.
having been exposed to things and the other kids having certain things. And so I think we do our best, and we are far from perfect, and no one gave us a manual. We weren't raised in any way to understand the complexity of these times. We're doing our best to be honest. I mean, I use a phone for my business, I have to get on my phone sometimes. And so it's like we do our best to be as radically present as we can when we're with our kids, not like on our phones in front of them. Sometimes it happens and we have to check each other. And but like, like an old, there, I think there's a way to like, you can expose your kids, to like maybe a cool old movie every now and then or something like that, so they can like get a sense of it. But you can also educate them and help them to have recognize the somatic experience of what it's like, because our kids spend a lot of time in the woods outside. And then they might want to watch a show or something, and we'll usually try and make it like something educational or nature based or something like this, but it's dysregulating in general, for them to be in front of a screen.
Yes.
And we're teaching them to recognize somatically what it's like for them in their bodies, so that they can learn what it's like to regulate themselves eventually in a world that's increasingly complex. It's like some parents are always trying to force their kids to finish their food or make them eat when they decide it's time to eat. And we're a little more like, we want our kids to actually learn for themselves what it's like to regulate themselves. And obviously they can't just regulate themselves completely. We are an extension of their nervous system right now at this stage of their life. And so Addie, our middle boy, he would just he would just eat cake all day if we let him. He's just wild like that. He's just like loves sweet things. So like we have to manage that for him. But Quill, our oldest boy, he's like, this is like a little too sweet for me. But he's a bit of an anomaly in like his self-regulatory capacity. So it's like, it's like, it is what it is. So it's like, yeah, trying to strike the balance of, this is the world. It's giving us a lot of freedom for me to be able to work online. I still train people in person. I still I trimmed 6 horses yesterday. Like, I'm not rich from being online. I think sometimes people think that people are like, they're working online and they're rich or something. I'm like, no, dude. I offer a $10 a month membership. I'm not like I'm not going to the bank to retire anytime soon. But I feel good about it. So yeah, it's a weird world, man. I'm like, yeah, I think it's important to continue I think that we can use technology to inspire us to revillage, and I think that's what we should use it for. It's like, get educated, learn the things that we weren't learned, because we're all, or most of us, are orphans, cultural orphans, where we didn't get brought up through an intact tradition, and we don't have all the stories and the ways of being, and all the ways of subsistence with the land. And so we got to learn it somehow. And if we don't have elders around us, we can go online for now, but we need to remember who we are and not get lost to tech for sure.
That's it. Yeah. One piece stood out. I want to highlight that quickly and bring some stuff in there. It's a nuanced conversation because honestly, like in this in the new age spiritual world, I feel like this like rewilderness and stuff, like it's nearly trendy now, isn't it? Like, you know, we hop on a bus and we document our life in the wild. We earn money through that on social media. We glorify that lifestyle to a certain degree. And it's just like, and basically everything, like all technology is just like inherently bad, you know, and you know, the children should just be outside, and it should be, you know, gentle parenting, and just be like with touch with the elements all the time and stuff. And I really loved what you said in that 1-2 little sentences where you were just like, you know, the kids that you've met who are living like that, they're missing some other parts of a social life, you know, some emotional intelligence maybe, or some you know, interpersonal sort of relating, which I feel like happens in, you know, let's say more urban environments, or people where people, you know, they are closer to each other and they interact more, they're forced to interact more, there's maybe just more exchange, more communication happening. So what I'm saying is essentially, which also is coming from a guest that I was speaking on the podcast, and she was living with a tribe in Papua New Guinea with her parents as like an indigenous tribe, like the Fayu tribe, completely remote, never seen anyone of the civilized world. Like they're like indigenous. And she has been born and raised there, and then basically with 17 went back to Switzerland and had to somehow readjust. And she is like still now, with being 40 something, having raised 4 children, adjusting. Like her nervous system is adjusting to the Western world, and she's like, as much as I love being here, like I cannot, so for example, judge the velocity, the speed of a car. I cannot, because my like the sensory of my eyes is not adjusted to the speed of a moving car moving towards me with like 100 kilometers an hour or something. So I don't never know when to cross a street, for example. And I'm just always overwhelmed when in a city by the sonic environment. So there's so many things that, you know, like they're all good for something. And if you only stay in that environment, they serve you well. But if you move between the worlds, you know, it all comes with benefits and disadvantages. So it's not just, I want to bring some nuance into this conversation. That's what I want to say, basically, in a long-winded way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, like, I think it's important to recognize that at a base genetic level, we are that indigenous wild progenitor of the human species. Like, it's been an absolute grain of sand on the beach of human evolution that we've been in this crazy technological boom. That being said, I'm sure that like when our ancestors first, you know, started you know, making tools, there was probably people who objected to making tools, you know, as like they're not traditionalists anymore. You should only be throwing rocks instead of like fashioning, you know, arrowheads. I don't know, you know, it's like there's always going to be a buck to the change. But that being said, we cannot escape our biology, and I think that there's a difference between being adapted to what is intrinsically natural to how the human animal ticks and runs and thrives, and then being maladapted to a sick society. And I think that we are a highly adaptable species. We can morph and change to anything. We can become experts on the computer, but we're suffering when we spend all our time in front of a computer. Period. In my opinion, we are. We're disconnected from the Earth's surface. I mean, unless you're sitting outside, you're under fluorescent lights. You know, you're hyper focused. Your hips are stuck in 90-degree hip flexion. Like, your body is adapting to its environment all the time. But is that adaptation beneficial to thriving life? Does it support thriving life, or does it just support mass production You know, that's the question for me. And so there has to be some sort of balance because we have to interface with the world. Like, it's like coming to grips with the reality that like these are the cards we were dealt. This is the world we inherited. But then recognizing that if we look to history, we look to just the evolution of our species, we are still that creature that needs nature. And yeah, and we're kind of living in zoos now. So, you know.
I love that. Yeah, yeah. Like it's a further nuance of that, like contemplation of, you know, be in the world but not of it. Like remember the essence of who you are while interacting with what is in front of you. And I feel like also on this podcast within the conversations, I feel like there is a collective, this is my personal opinion, I feel like there's a collective raise of consciousness like in the human species. Like I think we are evolving, and there is like a like what in a holistic consciousness of humanity, some insights were not as present as they are today. Let's just speak about just speak about trauma, or speak about psychology, or speak about emotional intelligence, communication. I feel like there is a general like heightened awareness around these topics in the collective consciousness. I'm not, and there will be always people with ego in positions of power who try to mislead us or try to taint the message. But I feel like we're moving into a certain direction, and we are evolving. And now it's just like a question of like being and becoming. It's always like this discrepancy between like being in the moment while also and being fully satiated and satisfied with what is, and then also still striving to become something, right? And to bring those two into
Mm-hmm.
harmony in business, in relationships, in all aspects of life. I feel like it's the ultimate goal of the human experience, like being and becoming. What do you think about that?
I love that. I just read a book. Have you ever have you read the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership?
I haven't read it, but like I know which book you're talking about. Yes.
Highly recommend it. It's a fantastic book. It's geared towards business, but it's really just about relationship and maintaining that. Well, first of all, recognizing that intrinsic wholeness where you're, outside of your mind's capacity to project into the future or worry about the past, you're actually good. You're actually okay. Right, right where you're at. Grant, not accounting for actual tragedy and things that might be happening for some people, but and so like coming to your growth, like coming to that becoming from a place of being,
Mm.
like being in that wholeness, and then realizing that like there's ways for you to continue to blossom, but you're already a flower, so to speak. So there's like you can continue to open and grow, but from a place of wholeness, not from a place of lack or something like that. Yeah, I actually I haven't read a book in a while that shifted my perspective into a new level of curiosity that I'm recognizing is maybe one of the most important qualities to maintain in human embodiment. And I think it's what gives us the ability to be open to life, every occurrence as something that can teach us, and we can know ourselves and our place in the cosmos through more and more through that curiosity. And it's super valuable for intimate relationship and obviously business relationships if you're going to have a conscious business entity where it's built on transparency and respect and mutuality. Then like, yeah, I mean, because like we just can't see what we can't see. And so when we don't have that curiosity, it's hard to become anything more because we're just defending, knee-jerk react, defending from our high horse about who we think we are. And the truth is that even in the most adversarial situation, there's something that we can glean. There's something to learn, but you can't do that unless you can't receive that unless you're open and curious. And so, yeah, I'm really, really big on that right now. It's been really great in my marriage. Yep.
How, if you, now that you brought that up, like, would you mind like elaborating on that? Like, how did that affect the relationship? Because it seems very interesting, like curiosity within a relationship.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you spend so much time with your intimate partner, and it's very, and we're just living out of our patterns, right? Just the ways that we were shaped by our environment, which isn't good or bad, it just is. But it's very easy to get into the pattern of just knee-jerk defending and trying to righteously uphold what we believe is right or what we think we know. But when you can approach an opposing opinion, which most likely and should hopefully be happening often in an intimate relationship, then then you can actually like sit with it and see what might actually be there for you to extract from that and to grow through. And I think that the foundation of a healthy relationship is deep listening. And if we're constantly waiting or in our head refuting whatever's being said because we think that we're right or that we have it figured out or whatnot, we're not ever really giving our partner or anyone for that matter that gift of deep listening, deep witness, where we can actually be out of our own agenda and just be taking in this person and what they're sharing, which is valid and real and sacred to that person. And so there's a level of honor and a level of respect that is felt and will deepen intimacy, in my opinion, when we maintain that curiosity and we can stay soft and open to what is being presented to us. And so it's to me it's this invaluable skill, deep listening, and that level of curiosity. I owe a lot of that to my wife because she's to me the one of the most, well, she's the most curious, like open and curious person that I've ever met, as far as being able to be like in any situation with any people of any particular belief or just way of being, and just like can find a way to connect somehow. And it's just a beautiful thing. And so I'm hoping to continue to grow in that as I get older, maintaining curiosity and openness and being able to just meet the humanity in people and continue to have that deep level of respect and honor and witness that I would hope that people would give to me when I'm sharing what's important to me. And then I think we can actually really learn through each other, even if we disagree.
Is there something else coming through? I feel like a very beautiful, soft energy when you speak about your wife. Something else she inspires you with?
Is there anything else she inspires me with?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's she's an anomaly to me. She's like the most free creature that I've ever met. Her ability to warp people's worlds and connect people, and yeah, she has a level of spontaneity and this like cosmic hilarity that is just softens my often stoic, upheld, sometimes rigid, way of being. And she's like a cosmic clown, in my opinion, in like the deepest, most mystical sense. And she inspires me musically. She's an absolute brilliant singer and songwriter, and the most caring, viciously loving like mother that I could have ever hoped to have kids with. And um, yeah, she's a special creature. That's felt by everybody who gets to come in contact with her. So I feel really, really lucky that I get to be with her.
Mm, that's beautiful. What's her name?
Fallon.
All right. Yeah, it's beautiful. Like there's a beautiful energy when you speak about her coming from you, and I'm sure she'll feel it too. So that's nice. Happy for you, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I've been involved for a while now with working with men, amongst men, within my own journey of healing, and I know that work has played and still probably does play a role for you and your healing as well. You touched upon your father earlier on. You touched upon initiation before. So I guess I just want to open up the portal of working amongst men, being in spaces of men, with men, and confronting potentially parts of yourself. Like, what does this work mean to you, and what have you gleaned from this work, also in regards to your father?
Yeah, my journey into men's work, I guess, has been through a dear friend of mine, Rob Miller. He runs an organization called Cascadia Quest. It's like a wilderness rites of passage organization, and youth rites of passage, do like modern vision fasts. And yeah, he created something called Tending Male Fire, which are these retreats that we hold out here in Southern Oregon. And they're retreats that are centered around power, anger, and grief, and they're exclusively for men, and they're out here in the wilderness, which is an important part of the piece. And I think that from what I've seen in my experience at these retreats, it's one of the most powerful and seemingly absent aspects of male relationship that I'm hoping it seems like is maybe making a resurgence, because I think the traditional peoples, men cared for each other in a different way and supported each other and took refuge in spaces that were just for men. And so it's been an absolute privilege to be involved in these retreats and to see the healing that happens, not through any particular process, although there is a process when it comes to the actual grief ritual of the weekends, because that comes from the tradition of Sabonfu Somé, who is Rob's teacher. And yeah, it's just the power. It's really highlighted the importance of male vulnerability and honesty, and specifically in the container of men. There's something unique about what happens when men can let down in a different way in the presence of other men, and get into a lot of the stuff that we've inherited as a species, as men in this modern Western world. A lot of things that I think, conscious men who don't want to admit that there are these certain qualities that they've taken on, that they're inside, and you don't really get to explore that until you're in a space that feels safe. And often I think that's without the presence of women. That's just the way it is, because there's some scary things, some big things that men have embodied and have shame about, and there needs to be a place that they can let down in a way that is safe. And because men can be really fucking scary. Men can be really scary.
Yes.
You know, these are the wars we see on this planet. And so there needs to be a place where men can actually get into the suppressed emotions and mentalities, be honest about them, move the emotions viscerally, and have witness and gain accountability through the eyes of other men, so that they can enter back into the world in a different way, in a way that's more integrated and whole, and respects the feminine qualities of their own being, which includes that emotional honesty and vulnerability and connection to nature. And I think that's why we see so much rampant destruction and exploitation of the world, is because we've denied that aspect of ourselves as men. And so we lose sensitivity to the feminine, which is creation, in my opinion. So yeah, men's work is huge. I have a men's group that when I'm in town, I'm meeting with every other week. And that's been a really, really nourishing experience for me as a practice. And yeah. And so, yeah, often when people come to coach with me one-on-one, there's a good amount of men who are even more trained up than me, but they're actually just needing a container like that to be able to mirror and reflect, and to be able to practice deep listening and to share vulnerably things that are really hard for them, because it's hard to be a man in this world in a number of ways. And so I think men are really struggling, and so I think that I don't have much exposure to all. There's so many different schools of men's work. There's like the Sacred Sons camp and so many different things I see online, and I don't necessarily like feel drawn to much of it, but I do feel that the importance of maintaining connections with men that hold a space for honesty and vulnerability is really, really important, and in the context of nature, always.
Beautiful. When it comes to initiations, what can you share about that? Also, in regards to your own life, you were speaking about destructive initiations of your youth, and later on, I guess, somewhat of an actual initiation or initiations and rites of passages that you went on. Why is that important? Also for especially younger men listening.
Yeah, I think that, and again, I'm coming from a place of, I'm speaking as a cultural orphan, so I want to just recognize that, as someone who was just dealt the cards he was dealt, I didn't get to go through a intact culture that had initiation rites, and so I'm informed by that experience. I just like to be honest about that when I talk about initiation, because the thing is that, like, it's something that I represent a lot of people essentially in the Western world who weren't initiated and come and don't have an intact culture. And so it's important because, like, again, it's like this whole thing where, like, we're in this modern world, but we still have these things that are so important to the development of our species and the maintenance of thriving life. And so, that being said, yeah, it's been, for me personally, I grew up pretty disenchanted youth. I didn't have any intact culture that was guiding me and steering me. And I think that when we don't have initiation and guidance, we haven't been pointed towards the importance of growing up and our responsibility to the bigger picture, then we can find our own ways to initiate ourselves. And I think it often happens through self-destruction. It's through like chaos. And I found that through physical violence and just straight up self-destruction through alcohol abuse and just living like a physical degenerate. It was like, and so I put myself through hardship in some sense to find myself. But that eventually led me to a really dear friend of mine, who's still a really good friend of mine, who I pretty much credit with saving my life. And he taught me about fasting and internal cultivation practice. And I did basically a hard 180 when I was like 22, 23 or something like that. I was very unwell. Many of my friends were dying, committing suicide, going to jail. And by grace, I skirted past that and I didn't go down that path, and did a 180 after meeting my friend and just feeling like this obviousness to like hang with him and learn what he was up to. And did a 180 overnight, basically left all my friends, left the rock and roll scene, and just fell in love with my own healing, which eventually led me to my teachers, my first teachers, where I really dove into internal cultivation practice. That was where I got into horses and riding horses as a spiritual practice, and living in the mountains of Colorado. And so I lived on retreat there, and I think that's where I really grew up. I feel like I had two teachers. They were married. My female teacher, she taught me to move my energy in a real way, and it was a pretty left-hand path. I think from the outside, people would look at what she was having me do and be like, "That's not fair. That's not nice. That's not this and that," But it was like the school of hard knocks. Like, she was breaking me down and teaching me to move my energy for clarity's sake in and of itself, but also just to access myself beyond all the stories and narratives I'd built up about myself. And so, and then my male teacher, he taught me like, he initiated me into like the inner yogic path. And I think that's actually where my love for movement as a means of self-cultivation, that's where that really came from, was from my teacher. Because he loved martial arts stances. We weren't affiliated with any particular dharma or sect, no real one tradition or anything like that. We were all about direct experience. We weren't about scripture. We were just like, he loved practice. Like, he just loved consciousness. And so, it was just like, and he was the most, and still to this day, the most dynamic, epic, like, adaptable human that I have ever known. And although I'm not in contact with them anymore, I still end up talking about them on every podcast I'm on, and I like to honor them, and I dream with them every now and then. But just, he was an absolute enigma in his ability to just, like, the naivety of a child, but like the power of a lion, and like totally clear and free and joyous and humble and human, all at once. And so it was there. I spent 6 years on retreat, and then I ended up leaving retreat and continuing to live in that area for another 6 years. That's actually where I just came back from on my trip to Colorado. But I feel like that was where I got initiated. Then I started to kind of put myself through other little initiatory things, like go spend go live in a cave for 5 days with limited food and different things like this, just to give myself more and more dedicated time to be out of the noise and to just touch in to myself deeper and deeper. And yeah, so initiation's been, it's just been what it has been for me, a bit of a fumbling around as a cultural orphan, doing my best to be honest and show up for those little initiations. And I think that initiation can be happening often, but I do think that there's something really important about the dedicated dive when you have that call inside yourself to go and do that. These men's retreats that we do, these 10 email fire retreats, are an initiation as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're an initiation because men go into the deep, dark trenches of their being and uncover their deepest pain to express it. And you come out different and you're changed. These men are changed even to this day. Even the people that, with the ones from years back, they're changed still. And so I think it's important to find a way to initiate ourselves. It's important to humble ourselves to the universe and be like, to pray in some way for answers to what we don't know so that we can be more whole and better. I think it's been essential for maintaining a species that lives in reciprocity and gives back and takes care of people and land in the bigger picture. And without that, I think what we see is an uninitiated culture that's just running rampant, hyper individualized, and destroying everything in its wake for, pleasure, for hedonism, essentially. And so, bit of a conundrum here on the planet, but I've got hope. I see the work that's happening in small little locales around of people who are initiating themselves and finding ways to be initiated and stepping into a way of being that's for the bigger picture.
Yeah, thanks for speaking on this. How are we on time? You still got a little bit, or you got to run?
I think I've got like another 10, 15 minutes.
Sweet. So yeah, it's just like a topic that's very dear and important to me because man, like I relate so much, and I like the term you're using, cultural orphan. I mean, I'm German, we don't even have to get started on the heritage that, is up on my shoulders and on the shoulders of my ancestry. And, the initiation into the footsteps of this pain and grief is essential for me to move forward and not to pass it down to generations to come. And so I've been subconsciously feeling that all my life, never was able to articulate it and to put my finger on it until coming in touch with men's work and into, facing these deeper parts of myself among men, to then come back to this and integrate it. And I guess, as it's my podcast and, I always think like, I want to make it crystal clear that, masculinity is not toxic. I always say there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. There is toxic people, and they may be male, some are female, some are whatever. It's not gender specific. We are talking about energies here, and the masculine energy comes with shadow aspects. They need to be looked at. They need to be integrated as much as the feminine energy comes with shadow traits. They also need to be integrated and looked at. But to blame men for the sole downfall of the planet is just not beneficial in my experience in working with men. And so I always like to differentiate a little bit and also bring some nuance into that, and basically just underscore what you've shared so beautifully, because it's just a very dear topic of mine. So so I guess landing this plane with you, what would you say is a good place to go some things to do for, let's say, but it's not only men, but just like people who are seeking, um, who are looking for a deeper connection towards, I guess, themselves. And you could call it an initiation, a self-initiated initiation. Um, what are some things you would point them towards?
I think it starts probably with like an internal, like a really sincere internal cry for that to come in whatever way, shape, and form. And I really think it's valuable to find wise older people to listen to. I think that we need to protect our elders and really continue to cultivate a space that respects and honors elders and learns through in real life from people like that. And so I guess we can do that at a distance through books and things these days, but like being in the presence of elders is really, really important. Um, Yeah, I mean, there's really amazing schools. You know, if you're in the States, there's like the School of Lost Borders and the Animus Institute and Cascadia Quest. There's these different organizations that are curating these rites of passage in a respectful way. You know, that's not just a pulling from, you know, ripping off of a
Yeah.
nature-based society or anything like that, but in a way that's honors the human, the indigenous heart in everybody. And um, yeah, I mean, I think that nature is the great initiator and has all the answers as far as what we do with our health, what we do with our time, and to experience an at homeness, a sense of place on this planet, which I think is so important to cultivate the natural inclination to protect the planet for the future generations because you just love it. Like it's just so obvious that you would just not trash the planet. Like that only happens from building relationship with nature. You have to actually gain a sense of place. So I think it's like before we can even think about getting initiated, I think it's more important to actually just go out and recognize that you are living amongst an entire living landscape of sentience. Go out and learn how to identify a couple trees. Go learn some plants. Go track some deer. Like go be in the presence of the other and realize that it's a big, big world out there outside of the human experience, and all of it's equally as important and sacred. And I think from that place, there's a certain level of humility. And from that place, we can start to move towards a bigger initiation. But until then, you know, there's some we got to. It's like the fundamentals, you know, which is why I talk about what I talk about. I'm trying to inspire people into the to take the first steps, the baseline steps, like get outside. Don't be afraid to have your bare feet on the ground. Realize how important the sun is. The sun gives life. The sun doesn't kill. The sun gives life. And just like breaking down these narratives of like the idea that nature is out there and we're over here. Realize that like there is this intrinsic oneness. The air passing by me right now, we're all breathing it. Me, the plants are giving me the air. They're exhaling this breath. I'm inhaling the breath. All the animals around me are inhaling and we're exhaling all together. That is oneness. It's not a far out concept. It's just practical. It's literally one. And so I think establishing that real visceral relationship with nature is the beginning of initiation.
Beautiful. What has been one of the, or maybe the hardest truth that you had to realize on your journey?
I think the hardest truth for me has been that I have a I have adopted way more of the aspects of my father than I realized. That the qualities that I don't blame him for. He was just a little kid at some point too, and was getting shaped by his environment, and it's all okay. But that, like, I was really shaped. And so there's my challenges are his challenges, and that's been hard for me, just in the sheer knowing of how much work I have to do, but also in the pain, recognizing how much harder it is for him, actually, because I am shifting it and healing it. So it's been this double-edged thing of, like, recognizing how much work I have to do, and that's all good and worth it, but also almost like embodying his pain and experiencing it viscerally sometimes, when in my own grief, for the tears that he can't cry because of how shut down he is. And so I think that's been one of the hardest things, if I had to just think off the cuff.
Thanks for sharing that. And what are you proud of?
I'm proud of my boys. I think it's pride or love, or, like, yeah, pride's slippery. I grew up with so much pride. It was one of the things I was taught by my dad, was this, like, family pride, which has positive qualities and has qualities of separation in it and righteousness. And so it's always interesting to think about, what am I proud of? I'm proud to be human. I'm proud to be on this planet. Like, I love this planet so much, and I feel at home on it, and I feel proud of fighting for the planet in a way that recognizes the intrinsic perfection of everything unfolding, even when it's really hard. But I feel proud to represent the planet. How about that?
It's beautiful. It's very beautiful. And one last one, which is not even such like a question per se, but I don't know, like, it struck me that in your journey there seem like multiple people who really, really, really made a difference. I guess, like, everyone makes a difference that we meet, right, in our life. Otherwise, we are just the sum of our experiences, right, and our encounters to some degree. And then there's individuals who really stand out and have a significant one. And so I guess I would just like to open up the space. Anyone you feel like speaking on, voicing a couple of words, a sentence, or more, however long, whatever much is coming through, who has made a difference in your life and who, I don't know, you want to honor in this space?
Yeah, it seems obvious to me right now to honor my mother, who held me in a way amidst my furious outrage as a teenager, destructive. Like, she just always was there for me, waiting for me. I must have put her through stress I can't even imagine. And she was just unconditionally there for me, and deeply impacted that unconditional loving quality in my own heart that is just, yeah, I just feel like she held me and allowed me to go through all the metamorphosis I had to go through, as painful as it was for all of us. And she was there the whole time, and just didn't judge me, and seemingly allowed it to happen in a way that had to happen, and didn't try and control me. And it showed me, it built a level of trust between me and her, and showed me how important it is to hold our people like that for a lifetime of trust. And so, yeah, I'll give it up for my mom right now.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for this conversation.
Thank you, Max.
It's absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that.
Hey, beautiful listener, you have made it all the way through. And I want to take a moment to say thank you. And you can do me an enormous favor. It's all I'm going to ever ask from you. And that is to go to your podcast app right now. And if you enjoyed the episode, give the podcast a 5-star rating. If you want to write 1-2 words or sentences, even more powerful, even better, thank you already in advance. And also, while you're at it, just click on that follow button, on that bell notification, so that you never miss a new episode. All of that just contributes, and it helps me to increase the reach of the podcast. That means I can attract bigger guests, and that means I can deliver more powerful episodes. So it's a tiny thing. I'm only gonna ask this little favor of you ever, not more. 10-15 seconds of your time, a couple of clicks, that's it. Makes a huge difference for me as a creator. So thank you so much.